The list of broken champions that have existed throughout League's history is very long, and whenever Riot announces a new champion, that list seems to get longer. I've covered a few broken champions in past videos, but there is one specific champion that I've been requested to cover way more than any other. This champion could be the most overpowered champion that has ever and probably will ever exist in League. In a game that has had champions that do this, and this, it really says a lot if a champion can even compete for the title of most broken champion. Sometimes, when a champion is really overpowered, it doesn't last long. They can be hotfixed pretty quick if they are clearly way too busted. In other cases, they dominate the game for an extremely long time. This champion was one of those cases. He was so strong that many players never even saw him actually played in a game. It was entirely possible that a player would start to play League and literally not see this character in an actual game. It was an unwritten rule that this champion was going to be banned. If he wasn't banned, then you were picking him. It's that simple. Even when this champion was picked, you still wouldn't get to see this champion in a game, because whoever didn't get him was definitely going to dodge. You already know it, this champion is Kassadin, or as he was known, Kassadin. With a ban rate exceeding 97% across all regions and a pick ban rate over 99%, it's likely that old Kassadin really was League's most overpowered champion, especially if one of the factors considered is the length of time a champion was overpowered. This video is going to cover the story and legacy of Kassadin, the champion that many consider to be League's most broken champion of all time, and a strong contender for League's first God-tier champion.
Justice will be served.
But first, let me introduce you to this video's sponsor, ExitLag. Dealing with bad connections or any sort of lag in any online game is one of the most frustrating things to deal with. High ping can be caused by bad routing to the game servers by your ISP, especially if you're trying to connect to servers based in a different region. Luckily, there's a solution, ExitLag. ExitLag optimizes data routing for your connection in real time. This can result in you having a much better connection in whichever game you choose to play. ExitLag routes packets through up to 4 different paths at once, ensuring that you're going to get the fastest and most stable connection. Depending on your location, ExitLag could improve your experience massively, and the best part is you can try it completely for free. I really like that you're able to create an account, try it out, and see what kind of results you get before actually paying anything. This way you can see the results for yourself before committing. They even have plans for multiple people, so you and your duo can both benefit. For the holiday season, they're offering 50% off the price of their annual plan, so there's no better time to try it out. If you do decide to purchase, you can click the link in the description below and benefit from their holiday pricing. Thank you very much to ExitLag for sponsoring this video, and let's jump back into it. Back in the day, League didn't have 10 bans like we have now. There were only 6. But really, there was actually 5. That's because one ban belonged to Kassadin for most of Season 3, 4, and part of 5. Kassadin once had over a 97% ban rate, but his pick rate is a little misleading. If you were in one of the champion selects where he wasn't banned, you still probably weren't going to get to see him, because someone was definitely going to dodge that game. I really wish that there was a way to see dodge rates, because Kassadin's would be astronomical. Not only would you need to be in a game where Kassadin was not banned, you'd also need to be first pick, because the other team would also want to pick him. Even when he wasn't banned, you only had a 1 in 5 chance of being first pick on your team. On top of that, you only had a 50% chance of being on the team that was actually first picking. This meant the chance of you getting to play Kassadin was even lower than it seemed. While there's no way to know how often people dodged Kassadin in Champ Select, it wouldn't surprise me at all if people dodged him in most of the games where he actually was locked in. All that to say, it would take nothing short of a miracle for you to be able to play him. For this reason, Kassadin mains basically didn't exist. They really couldn't. The chance of being able to play him was simply too low. Instead, everyone would pick Kassadin if given the chance. It's just how strong he was. If you played jungle, but happened to be first pick and Kassadin was up, you weren't playing jungle. You were playing Kassadin. I mentioned before that the time period when Kassadin was known as ridiculously overpowered was mostly during seasons 3, 4, and 5. You're probably wondering why this is the case. Why did Kassadin seem to come out of nowhere in Season 3 and become not just a very good champion, but an absurdly overpowered champion? Surely he must have been buffed going into Season 3, right? Well, no actually. Kassadin really didn't receive many changes over the early years, at least compared to the other champions. And going into Season 3, there were no direct buffs or nerfs to him at all. So to really explain the rise and fall of Kassadin, we have to go back to the beginning. When Kassadin was added to League in 2009, he had some unique abilities. His passive reduced damage from abilities by 15% and transformed it into bonus attack speed. Yes, it was attack speed that it originally gave him, a weird choice for an AP mage. Kassadin's Q, right from the start, was ridiculous. It was a point-and-click ability that did damage and had a silence attached to it. This ability was one of two defining factors that made him so strong for so long. There is a very good reason that you don't see many silences in League anymore, especially point-and-click silences. It's because it is an extremely strong mechanic. Fiddlesticks, Talon, and Soraka all lost their point-and-click silences. The only champion left with a point-and-click silence is Garen, and it's a little different because at least he has to be in melee range to use it. Kassadin's silence lasted for 1 second at rank 1, scaling to 2.6. I mentioned that Kassadin's passive reduced damage from abilities. This basically didn't matter at all because of how strong his Q was. You couldn't trade with Kassadin. If you tried, you'd be silenced, and he would walk away having won the trade with no real counterplay. Kassadin's W caused his melee attacks to drain the target's mana and gain twice the amount that he drained. Minions actually used to have mana bars, and he would restore mana by taking it from the minions. His E caused him to gain a charge for each spell that Kassadin cast. When he reached 4 charges, he could activate the ability to deal magic damage in front of him and slow enemies' hit. And finally, Kassadin's iconic ultimate, Rift Walk, or as it should have been named, Rift Teleport or Rift Sprint. This ability let Kassadin blink to another location, dealing damage. Each Rift Walk in a short period of time would cost more mana and deal more damage. Even though I remember the ridiculous range of his ultimate, it's still weird to see it. This is completely absurd, even by the standard of mobility in League in 2024. Throughout the early years of League's release, Kassadin would receive some changes. Just a few weeks after being added, his E was changed to also stack on enemy ability casts. This is how it still works in the game today. In 2010, his W changed to restore mana, with the drain part being removed. At this same time, an active was added, which is going to sound very strange. On a 15-second cooldown, Kassadin gained armor penetration, starting at 7 and scaling to 50. This was still in the very early days of League, where items and builds were not as obvious or straightforward as they are today. It's still very weird to see. Just under 1 year later, in 2011, the ability will be changed again to no longer grant armor pen, but instead deal bonus magic damage. This is the version of Kassadin that existed for years, with the occasional buff or nerf to a base stat or scaling. If this is the version of Kassadin that existed for years though, and from day one he had this ridiculous ultimate and absurdly strong point-and-click silence, why did it take years for him to become so popular? Why wasn't he seen as overpowered right from the beginning? Well, there's a bunch of different factors. The game was still new and the player base was mostly casual. You can find posts saying Kassadin is weak and also that he's way too strong. Sites for seeing win rates and ban rates really weren't established yet. LoL King was one of the more popular ones, but even that wasn't established until 2012, multiple years after the game was released. LoL Statistics was around since at least 2011, but most players weren't using any of these sites yet anyway. Speaking of ban rates, I mentioned earlier that Kassadin basically owned one of the 6 bans. A lot of people forget though that until Season 2, there were only 2 bans per team. It was the first patch of Season 2 that changed it to be 3. In these early days, the meta also wasn't defined. No one really knew what was best, and it took a lot longer for people to gauge the strength of a champion. In Kassadin's case though, the way that many people were playing really worked against him. Anything could go mid lane. It wasn't a rule or even an idea that mages had to go mid. You could have double mages bot lane. It was common, at one point even meta, that an ADC like Ashe would go mid lane. And while Kassadin would demolish mages, as he was designed to be an anti-mage champion, basically the only thing that could make him struggle were ranged attack damage champions. His passive didn't lower their damage, and they really didn't care about his silence. The idea of playing safe and proper laning strategies simply weren't known to most players. So playing versus a ranged AD mid would result in a lot of very bad trades and very bad games for people playing Kassadin. On top of this, it wasn't easy to sustain yourself in lane during the early days. If Kassadin couldn't hit minions, he couldn't get his mana back either, and players players simply struggled to navigate the laning phase. Despite all of this, Kassadin was strong, but many players didn't know how strong he was. As time went on, and as Season 3 approached, the meta changed quite a lot. By this time, it was standard to have a mage or an assassin mid lane. This was hugely favorable to Kassadin, because he didn't have to deal with his worst matchups anymore. In addition, the preseason patch for Season 3, which dropped on December 4th, 2012, also added an item you might remember: Crystalline Flask. This starting item was cheap and was used to give you health and mana, exactly what Kassadin needed. It started with 3 charges, which refreshed when you went back to base. The meta being more established and the addition of better sustain options meant that Kassadin's problems had gone away. Kassadin was free to dominate the Rift, and that is exactly what he did in 2013. There is nothing that could better represent the rise of Kassadin than the match between Fnatic and SK Gaming in January 2013. This match led to what was easily the most hyped and most exciting moment in competitive league history up until that point. Not just that, even today, almost 12 years later, this is one of the most well-known, memorable, and iconic moments of all time. The match was over 50 minutes long, and it was extremely close. The final few minutes were a non-stop back and forth, with each team ending up in the other's base, attacking the Nexus at some point. You're probably surprised to hear that at the 31-minute mark, SK Gaming had over a 5,000 gold lead and was sieging Fnatic's base. And then, 5 minutes later, SK would decisively win a teamfight over Baron, giving them 4 kills and trading nothing in exchange. It seemed like SK had the game secured, and all they had to do was push into Fnatic's base.
There's a rupture coming down from the back. Kevin is in there. He knows he's not spotted because that pink ward is in. Kevin now going to get focused. He's down to half HP. But SK turn around. Are they going to go for it? Ragnarok actually popped there by Kevin, a little bit premature. And there is Cyanide actually going to get rooted down, knocked up as well. Can they finish off the kills? xPeke going very low. Elise going to get in there. Brilliant route, but is he enough to save them? Elise mobs at once. Soaz now in all kinds of trouble at the top, being chased by Candy Panda and Kevin. Flash over by Candy Panda. Red buff on him, and he's not going to escape that one.
They're going to turn on towards the inhibitor. Are Fnatic going to be able to fight for this one, or are they just going to flat give it up, fight on the Nexus turret? The Zeno, xPeke is going to get caught. He gets silenced, Joe, and they're going to straight in there. Is it going to be enough? The Zyra ultimate pops them up. True Shot Barrage didn't really land any hits on them. Yellow Star out the back, trying to keep as much damage down. Candy Panda is still very low. They might dive on towards him. Soaz using the ultimate, ace in the hole, pops on towards Kevin, and they will just fend off this fight.
Fnatic engaged on SK and managed to pick up a few kills, shrinking the 7,000 gold lead down to 5,000.
xPeke not quite being knocked up. Here comes a home guard. Ramos rolling in there. Ocelot is taunted. He goes down. Kevin's not very healthy. Cyanide taking a lot of damage, but Soaz jumps in the middle. Candy Panda is low. Can they finish him off? Yes, flashing from Yellow Star. Can they get any more? xPeke will come in as well. Hercule Bomb being chased down. Not sure that Nif will be able to escape this one. One more auto attack or a Piltover Peacemaker will do it.
This led to an immediate push down mid lane, with Fnatic breaking open SK's base and eventually taking an inhibitor. The counter push had SK running straight back into Fnatic's base again. They got an inhibitor, but traded a kill for it. This back and forth continued for over 10 more minutes, with the gold lead getting smaller and the game getting even more chaotic. 52 minutes in, SK traded an inhibitor for Baron, reset, and caught xPeke trying to teleport out. This ended with him dying, and it looked like SK finally had the win. They got 2 inhibitors, but traded 2 kills trying to get the 3rd.
The Super Minions are starting to spawn down there. It's going to be the 3rd inhibitor to the game. Cyanide's going to get caught out. The orb just bounced left, right. He just avoided that. Ocelot finally finished him out. Soaz tries to come around, but leaps out of it again. They do manage to pick up 1 kill. Can they get a 2nd? Can they get a 3rd? Strike towards it. Soaz on towards Hercule.
With xPeke back up, they pushed straight down mid lane, opened up the Nexus, and once again ended up losing multiple people.
Can they finish off the Nexus? This is close stuff. 8 seconds for Candy Panda. They're going to focus in towards Yellow Star. Kevin going low. Big Mike kicking out. Silence coming in there as well. And Rayton will go down to Kevin. So that's going to be the focus here as well. Yellow Star has to back away. xPeke taking damage all over the place. How many Daly's going to land? Can they get him? xPeke somehow gets away. And Fnatic not quite able to finish the job.
Fnatic had 2 inhibitors down and super minions hitting their Nexus turrets. 2 people respawning, and once again, it looked like the madness was over and SK had the win. xPeke, though, had other plans.
And they're just going to pile straight up towards those Super Minions in the base. You can see there's coming in there. xPeke is definitely up towards the Nexus. Kevin is going to be able to go towards him. He's trying to do it, but
This match likely had a direct impact on how players felt about Kassadin. It's a common misconception that his ban rate was extremely high right from the start. Throughout 2013, Kassadin's win rate would slowly rise, and so would his notoriety. At the beginning of January, before the Fnatic vs SK match, Kassadin had a 5% play rate and a 50% win rate, with a 2% ban rate. 2 months later, Kassadin's play rate had almost doubled to 10%, and his ban rate had quadrupled. Even his win rate had gone up. By the end of July, Kassadin was the 8th most banned champion, with almost a 25% ban rate and a 52% win rate. The most banned champion at the time was Thresh, who had almost an 84% ban rate. Just 1 month later, Kassadin was at a 63% ban rate, making him the 3rd most banned champion, below only Thresh and Vayne. Finally, in September, Kassadin would become the most banned champion in the game, with a 79% ban rate. And in October, Kassadin fully hit meme status for reaching a 90% ban rate across all servers. If you look through old forum posts, this is when you will find a huge increase in posts about Kassadin. This is also the point in the game's history where if Kassadin was up, you picked Kassadin, and if you didn't, someone dodged. And if they didn't dodge, then someone was probably getting reported. Kassadin's ban rate didn't peak here though, it would get even higher. Before talking about that, we need to talk about why his ban rate was exploding to begin with, seemingly out of nowhere. With no direct buffs or nerfs, he went from not even being in the top 10 most banned to being the most banned in a short period of time. Well, this same month, October 2013, was also the end of Worlds 2013, which is very relevant. Leading up to Worlds, Kassadin's presence in the LCS overall was not very high. In the EU LCS though, he did appear in almost half of games played as a pick or ban. In NA, he only showed up in 2% of games during the LCS spring split. During the summer split, it jumped up to almost 17% of games. For most of Season 3, Shen, Elise, Thresh, Twisted Fate, and Zed dominated. Kassadin was clearly popular in the EU LCS though, and one thing was known: if you were playing against Fnatic, you had to ban xPeke's Kassadin. That is exactly what C9 did not do when playing versus Fnatic in the quarterfinals of Worlds 2013. This also led to the creation of an early league meme.
And a first pick Kassadin. This is Fnatic saying they don't respect High's ability in mid lane, because normally Peke waits for that Kassadin pick very late. Oftentimes the European metagame later on in the season started evolving to last picking your mid, but Fnatic just going right away with Kassadin, who they've won so many games with, and saying there's enough mids banned that they're not fearing anything from Cloud9.
Kassadin had become a standard ban in Europe throughout the summer, because you got Alexic, which we've already seen. We've seen Peke on it. Bjergsen, who is right behind me. There's so many champions in that mid lane that are so strong on Kassadin. And there's the Hawk shot. They realize the danger. Peke does come in, doesn't get the slow. Meteos is going to land back in there. Are they going to go for him? They do lock him down. Stan United has been used. Fnatic are just going to back straight out. There's going to be a good catch on towards Cyanide. He's taking a lot of damage. He may go down from this one, but the rest of Cloud9 have gone a little too deep for it. Meteos is going to get taken down. Pauses the next focus target. Soaz comes in. Good crescendo from Lemonation. Blows Soaz in there. Pops that ultimate straight off though. Peke picks up one. Peke going to close in towards Lemonation. He's going to be the next focus target. There it is. The Riftwalk force pulse straight on towards High. Going to be next. Sneaky goes down off the side. Peke's going to roam in. There's the triple kill. And it's Fnatic cleanup duty. That's an ace.
Just destroyed Cloud9 in that one.
C9 would ban Kassadin in the second game and had much better results.
I'd think that Cloud9 would focus their bans elsewhere, but they actually go with the exact same bans as game one.
Exact same bans so far. Remember, High can play Kassadin. Instead, they've banned out Kassadin. So they're like, no, not going to get to play that one.
Yeah, and they have many cloaks as well. Lemonation has done well with his objective goal. He's got a couple Megatron cloaks in there, totaling 186 magic resist right now. Cloud9 has some of the best team fight coordination in the world, and that's the reason they were 30-3 in the North American LCS. Round 2.
High comes around the side there. They're going to dive on towards Peke. He's just going to get dropped where he stands. Equalizer comes down. Pushu trying to put as much work as he can in, but he just can't fight down Cloud9. He's putting the rockets out, but it doesn't matter. The rest of his team have dropped like flies. It's going to be the third inhibitor of the game going to Cloud9. Cloud9 will close this game out surely. There's nothing Fnatic can do. We're going to game 3, ladies and gentlemen. North America strikes back.
With one game left in the series, it seemed obvious that Kassadin would be banned again.
Fnatic had 8 games in the group stage over the past week, won 7 of them. They just suffered their second loss, actually, of the entire World Championships, whereas Cloud9, they don't have the luxury of suffering a second loss. If they lose again, they're out.
Rumble taken away. They realizing that did not work. That leaves Kassadin open. Will they first pick it again, or will they allow it to go over to high? Do they feel there's a higher value first pick?
They should just go for Kassadin again. It worked so well in the first game. And since Cloud9 completely stuck with their bans, why wouldn't we see this? This is what Fnatic won with.
Peke pouring a burst of damage down. Paranoia going out. It's on Pushu. That's going to be the focus target. But Meteos has gone very deep. Oh, the ultimate comes out from Yellowstar. Catches them all down. Good damage. First kill finally for Cloud9. Catching on towards it. Stranglethorn bounces Yellowstar in the air.
Peke is full.
Is it enough? Peke comes back in there. He gets on towards Lemonation. Paul's being taken down by this support just off the side there. Peke goes around. He gets himself the triple. And Fnatic keep driving on home the victory. I think one thing has been made clear. There's going to be no Kassadin in the semi-finals. That, I think, we can guarantee, because right now, Fnatic are looking like a shoo-in to be playing in the Galen Center. Final inhibitor turret of the game is being focused, and Yellowstar manages to land his ultimate elimination, and High manages to get his Zhonya's hourglass off just in time. Chain of Corruption comes out, pulls his drone, puts some damage down. Hemoplague on towards Cyno, tries to get the kill. Yellowstar does go down. That's the second kill of the game for Cloud9, but it is going to be another triple for Peke. Here comes the Quadra. They're going to give it to him. Yes, they are. It is Peke dominating 11-0-7. Fnatic are going to go through to the semi-finals, taking down the North American champions, Cloud9.
C9 not banning Kassadin quickly became a meme in the community. So much so that when C9 High did an AMA, he said that people could ask why they did not ban Kassadin. The casters had guessed during Fnatic's match that they would not have the chance to play Kassadin in the semi-finals, because Kassadin was definitely going to be banned. That turned out to be a great prediction, because that's exactly what happened.
One thing I was surprised at the Lissandra ban, that's a key ban actually for Royal. They really needed to ban that, because that would shut Uzi down those mid to late game team fights, coming into the side and flanking, so it's a really key ban. And Kassadin as well, imperative. These two bans are key bans against Fnatic, and it's really good to see Royal actually ban these out.
I feel like they hurt Kassadin, or hurt Peke rather, with the Kassadin Lissandra ban as well for the other solo lane, so they're going to be getting that out right away. Lissandra Kassadin every single time.
It's been Lissandra, Kassadin, and Shen as the 3 bans for Royal this entire series.
First, I want to ask you, key in taking out Fnatic seemed to be your plan all along. Ban Kassadin, ban Lissandra. Tell us about your tactics.
Like Kassadin is one of the best mid-AP champions that is played by xPeke. We have a lot of tactics and strategies to play against Kassadin, but still, after our discussion, we think Kassadin is still a threat for us. We are very happy, but at the same time, we have to think, if we have so many mistakes, how can we beat SKT?
Kassadin would only show up once in the finals of SKT versus Royal Club, and the reaction from the casters might surprise you.
You gotta think it's Kale. It's something that White's picked against Fizz. It's what we've seen Alex each do well on. What? Royal is out of their minds right now. I just gotta wait. I just have to wait and see what happens.
Kassadin has been successful throughout this tournament, but up against this team comp? No.
Wow. What? Ooh. Okay. So, if I'm SKT right now, I am 2v1ing Whites. Or just hitting him with Zed, because both of those matchups are horrendous for Kassadin, especially because SKT main weakness is the early game, but they should have an easy early game against these Royal lanes. I'm liking SKT right now.
SKT, of course, went on to win 3-0, and they collected their first Worlds win. But this is the story of Kassadin's rise. So why is it that Kassadin is only showing up once in the finals when he has a 90% ban rate in solo queue? Why is it that the casters are so surprised to see him picked here? What caused him to only have a 30% presence at Worlds if he was so strong? As strong as he was at this point, there were plenty of other strong champions too, that often fit better into a competitive team comp. There were 6 champions with over a 75% presence at Worlds 2013. Zed was picked or banned in every single game of the tournament. He had a 100% presence. Shen was also picked or banned in almost every game. These 2 picks were extremely high priority and all teams were drafting around them. It's worth noting that Zed was also seen as overpowered in solo queue. The top 2 bans in October were Kassadin, as mentioned, at a 90% ban rate, and Zed at a 79% ban rate. Both Zed and Shen were just better, more flexible priority picks in competitive. Combining that with the fact that players were very confident on Zed and Shen led to these champions being much more important to the draft overall. Zed especially was an AD champion, which Kassadin really didn't want to lane against. The next most played mid laner after Zed was Orianna, and Orianna brought so much utility it was easy to pick her in a lot of different situations. When you consider that Zed was so strong that he had a 100% presence and also had a great matchup against Kassadin, it's impressive that Kassadin still managed to be a prominent pick anyway. In every game where Kassadin was played, except for one game in the grand finals, Zed was banned, and in the game where he wasn't, Kassadin lost. With Kassadin's overall strong performance at Worlds, his ban rate was continuing to grow. This explosion in popularity resulted in Riot quickly making changes to him by the end of October. He and Zed were both nerfed in the same patch. They removed his magic resist per level, lowered the base damage on his Q, but also lowered the mana cost. They increased the duration of his silence later, while nerfing it early on. They also increased his ult base damage, nerfed the base damage per stack, but added a small AP ratio. It also now refunded half of the total mana cost when it dealt damage to an enemy champion, which was a new and strong effect. Many players were surprised to see these specific changes, with some saying that it seemed like an overall buff to Kassadin, especially the changes to his ult. In the immediate aftermath of the patch, his win rate did drop by almost 3%. Less than 1 month later though, his win rate was almost back to where it was, and by January 2014, his ban rate had reached a new all-time high. The NA and EU LCS season started in January 2014, and this also marked the start of the Year of Kassadin. Kassadin was the most banned champion in competitive, and it really wasn't close. In the LCS, Kassadin was being picked or banned in every single game. When he finally wasn't banned, this is what happened.
It's gotta be Kassadin here, the final ban.
Yeah, Kassadin, it will mean that we have obviously Elise open, we also have Lucian for the first pick option, and also LeBlanc is open for Gambit side. Wow. Actually, Kassadin is open. Whoa.
Wow. And that gives them... Whoa, okay. There we go. Darian fist bumps and
Darian was so
there
happy.
we go. Thank you very much. Kassadin first pick.
And I've never seen someone being so happy over getting a pick like Darian. He was just all over the place when he could first pick this Kassadin.
Just going to push that bottom lane out. The Copenhagen Wolves looking for a bit of a push. They've managed to catch out Edward, but is he going to be able to survive this one? A lot of damage coming his way. He's finally going to get shut down, but Diamond and Darian are both in there. There's so much damage, and here comes Kassadin from around the side. Kowto's going to fall from this one. There's another one. Amazing. Very, very low. Darian does die, but Alex doing all the damage. Well, look at Forgiven going head-to-head with Genja. Alex dives in one more time. Youngbuck silenced up. Can he chomp down on towards Genja? No! Double kill Alex in. An ace for Gambit.
But look at the damage from Alex now. He's having a lot, and Solar Flare actually on Edward once again.
That's really bad news for the Copenhagen Wolves. Gambit know that without all that they can actually go in. They put the DFG on towards Kowtow. He's not going to go down from it. He's moved up towards the back, but the rest of Gambit closing in on them. There's a kill for Forgiven. Youngbuck is low. Amazing is low. I'm not sure Forgiven will escape. He gets stunned. Amazing goes low as well at the back flank to the Boomerang. That's only a 2-for-1 at this point, but it's enough to open up the in-hit. Gambit are going for this one. They are surely going to be able to pick this one up. There's a Cyclone used by Diamond to keep them away. Nexus is low. Nexus is finished. Gambit pick up the win. With all that said and done, I have to ask you here, Kassadin, they led him through the ban phase. Should they have banned Kassadin?
It's always easy to say now. They obviously had a tactic with the lane swap. They fought to keep him down. But yes, you should always ban Kassadin. Kassadin is open again.
Taken away. Kassadin is in, and Froggen's going to surely take Kassadin. How does Kassadin get banned in every game and then left open twice in a row?
Why would you ban Draven against Taps who haven't played it at all and then give them Kassadin on Froggen? I don't get it.
Well, it looks like Wicked didn't really understand that one either. He's had a little giggle and drinks his water down. Second Kassadin in a row, this time going to be with Froggen, and we saw that picked 4% of the time, 100% win rate, of course.
And now 2 games in a row, Kassadin have been left open. 2 games in a row, he's been very, very hard to deal with when it comes down to the team fights. I expect to see banned in the next one.
Thanks for that one, genius.
Well, it's just been open 2 times, so...
Riot had already started working on a rework for Kassadin, which was supposed to be releasing soon. But because Kassadin was performing so well everywhere, they also nerfed him ahead of his rework at the end of February. They lowered the base damage of 2 abilities and took half a second off of his silence at all ranks. Kassadin was so unlikely to be played to actually make it into a game that Riot said this in the actual patch notes. These are short-term tweaks to knock his power levels down a peg while we continue testing. Maybe someone, somewhere, will get to play him in a ranked game. It was after this nerf in March of 2014 when Kassadin would reach his all-time high, legendary ban rate peak. Kassadin had over a 97% ban rate, while also continuing to dominate in pro play. When Kassadin actually was able to be played in a real LCS match, as we saw, it was a big deal.
Kassadin took a happy turn as the Voidwalker Rift walked out of the ban jail and onto the Rift during Super Week. He was picked 3 times in North America and twice in Europe.
The situation was dire, and Riot had to do something about Kassadin, because the nerf had accomplished nothing. Just a couple of weeks later, Riot released Kassadin's rework, and it definitely looked like they had achieved their goal. Kassadin's ban rate dropped by 63%, and his win rate hit 43%. You might be asking what they changed, and they changed pretty much everything. His passive no longer converted damage to attack speed. Now it just made him ignore unit collision. His Q damage was lowered, and more importantly, the silence was finally removed completely. It now granted a magic damage shield. His W now dealt magic damage on every auto attack and restored missing mana on his next attack after activating it. The basic attacks no longer restored mana on each hit. His ultimate now scaled with maximum mana instead of 80% of his AP. The amount of times you could stack it for extra damage was lowered a lot, from 10 to 4. The stacks lasted 4 seconds less, the base damage per stack was lowered, and rather than increasing mana cost by 100, it doubled the cost with every stack. It no longer refunded mana when he hit an enemy champion with his ult. They did, however, reduce the cooldown slightly. So with his ult being changed a lot and his silence being completely gone, it's pretty clear why his ban and win rate dropped so much. Their goal with the rework was to keep his extreme mobility, but introduce counterplay by removing his silence and making him less bursty. And they had succeeded. Many players felt that Kassadin had been killed, and they finally had another ban to use in solo queue. But you might be surprised to hear this was not the end of Kassadin's story. The 2 most important factors that made Kassadin so strong and so difficult to balance was his silence and his ultimate, especially the range of his ultimate, which he still had. People often misremember another big nerf to his ultimate as being part of his rework, but it wouldn't happen for quite a while yet. We'll get there. So after the rework, Kassadin's ban rate dropped to 3%. His win rate was only 43%. Those are the stats as of the first week of April 2014. By the end of that same month, after he was quietly buffed, Kassadin's win rate was almost 51%. To be clear, his win rate was now 3% higher than it was before he got reworked. Despite this, his pick rate and his ban rate were between 4 and 5%. People were not picking him, and they didn't see him as a threat. In the first week of May, his ban rate jumped up almost 30%. Riot reacted to his rising win and ban rates by nerfing him on May 8th. In the patch notes, they said that they had overbuffed him. Despite this nerf, his ban rate continued to climb. So why was that? Why was the champion that was just nerfed actually gaining popularity? Well, the All-Star 2014 tournament had started on May 8th, the same day he was nerfed, and was played on patch 4.6, where Kassadin was buffed. This was an invitational tournament in Paris, which brought together the winners from the NA and EU LCS, LPL, GPL, and OGN champions. There were 17 games played in total, and despite his rework, Kassadin was banned in 16 of them.
Kassadin was the final ban from SKT. Seeing that good old Kassadin returning as a ban for every red team.
I was actually looking forward to Kassadin being played in this one because I have a bunch of things I want to say about the new Kassadin and what it brings. It's a little strong at the moment. It was actually nerfed in the 4.7 patch that just shipped last night in some regions, so expect to see it banned a lot more, especially against xPeke.
And a surprising twist, the only game of the entire tournament where Kassadin was not banned was in a match between SKT and Fnatic. xPeke did get Kassadin.
It will be Kassadin.
Wow.
So yeah, focus on LeBlanc being still up, but Kassadin is still up. This is a Peke special. I would really like to see him pull out actually teleport just for old time's sake.
It's worth noting that Kassadin had been an absolute terror in League for so long that xPeke's iconic play was now so old it was something to be referenced for old time's sake. Kassadin was still terrorizing the game.
We've all seen the Zed highlight video. We've all seen what he did to Ryu. He has locked in Zed once again.
We were looking for more SKT skins, right?
Absolutely true. We'll see whether he pulls that out.
They can have the Jax one. They can have pretty much all of them here if they really wanted to. Fnatic want to steal away the last SKT skin. Yeah. Oh, they're breaking the strategy.
That is exactly where the boos have come from. Yellowstar may well go for Zyra, which would steal away Mandu's final skin.
Oh my.
Reckless could go for Caitlyn. Of course, Caitlyn, one of the champions he's played a lot of throughout the European LCS. We'll see whether that gets locked in a moment, though.
And he's not really that big of a fan of her because of the fall off of the champion. And Caitlyn, as a champion, you have to take. All right. I'll give you the 5 SKT skins here. Everybody's very happy that it actually came to fruition.
SK Telecom is saying, okay, we'll play the comp that we played at Worlds. Bring us your best.
First pick Kassadin. Will Peke on his signature champion be able to handle it?
Fnatic as the blue team up against SK Telecom in all their skins as the red team.
A little greedy here from SKT trying to get Dragon and bottom turret at the same time.
Yeah, risky play. The Dragon's going to get reset, but they're going to try and collapse on towards him. Remember, there's no tower here. Peke and Yellowstar. Peke using that teleport. Faker and Bengi both very low. Reckless is going to keep them in vision. Peke chases around. Picnic may try and escape. Ace in a hole. Takes Bengi down to nothing. Peke instead is going to chase on towards him. Reckless is going to be careful. He's got 2v1. Faker goes deep on it towards him. He gets away. Cyanide leaps in. He gets one. Now Bengi's running for his life. Can he get away through the jungle? He's got the support of Mandu just off to the side. He can safeguard away to him.
Dragon. Peke's there to hold him though.
Peke going to try and chase on towards this one. Will have another Rift Walk. It's going to cost him a lot of mana to try and close that gap. He's going to come around the side. Will have his force pulse available. Gets caught by the grasping root. Bengi's still chasing away. He's going to surely safeguard to Mandu, who now gets focused by Peke. Peke closing in towards him. Cyanide coming in behind him as well. Cyanide puts the ward down.
So
gets the double. He jumps away. Gets caught out. Gets himself one. Gets himself two. Gets himself three. And Fnatic get the 3 kills in a row.
That was almost a 4-minute long fight, Demon. Starting in the bottom lane and ending on the other side of the map.
They do manage to shut him down. He has to teleport away from this one to try and splash away. Teleport coming in down the bottom. Peke is going to come in around the side. Cyanide pounces on towards Impact. Impact's going to get taken down. Now Bengi's going to get locked up by the Zenith Blade. He's got no support from his team right now. Now they're collapsing around it. Elite comes out from Cyanide. Look across the map. The rest of SK Telecom are fleeing from this one as Reckless closes around the side there. Bengi is running them a merry chase, but I don't feel he's going to be able to get away.
Yeah, he's definitely cornered. They're going to take him down. The question is, what will Fnatic do with this? 2 main members of SKT off. Baron is up. That's the jungler and the Jax down. However, you got to keep track of teleports. Name of the game here. Once Impact does come back up, he'll have his teleport. They can turn it into a 4 vs 5 at Baron. If Fnatic are not careful, they will take too much damage from Baron.
They have to take this Baron down fast. You can see Mandu off the side. He's got Stranglethorns available if he wants to just throw it in there for some interference. Faker's looking to maybe try and make a play. He's gone in. He's gone for Cyanide. He wants to try and pop him down. Maybe enough. He gets Cyanide down before the Baron drops. The Baron is so low. It's going to get stolen away by Faker. This is tragic for Fnatic. Peke's going to get dropped there. What sublime play by the Season 3 World Champion. The Dominions are all over it. Mandu misses the ultimate there. Oh, the passive, sorry. Bengi gets locked up. He backs away. They have to defend these turrets.
It's still alive.
Taking it down. I'm not sure. I think they've just about cleared the wave. One more hit is there. Yellowstar blocks it with his body. And Fnatic survive for now.
A little bit of breathing room for Fnatic, but it's so hard for them because they have no turrets to defend with. And SKT have these such strong duelists. Oh, Faker.
Teleports back towards the finish. That's gotta hurt against Peke and crew. A backdoor comes out from SK Telecom on Fnatic.
Kassadin did end up losing in the only game where he made it through the ban phase, but it was clear that he was still very strong. By the time this match was played, he was already nerfed on live servers. This didn't stop Kassadin's popularity and his ban rate from rising even more. By the end of June, he was nearing a 68% ban rate. The end of July, almost 73%. At this point, his solo queue win rate was only 46%. The most banned champion at the time, Braum, had over a 53% win rate for reference. Kassadin was once again seen as a must-ban champion in solo queue. It wasn't long before Kassadin was the most banned champion in the game, again. This led to a large nerf in August 2014, which made it so that his ult stacks would take an additional 8 seconds to clear. Even without his silence, Kassadin was simply too much to deal with. His ultimate in particular was proving impossible for Riot to balance. Riot felt his mobility was too good, and this would heavily nerf his ability to rift walk around the map. The nerf had a huge impact. His win rate dropped below 45%, and after this most recent change, Kassadin would receive no further adjustments for a long time. The EU LCS Summer Playoffs were also in August, the same month as his nerf, and Kassadin still had a high presence, but he did lose in 5 of the 6 games he was picked in. At the NA LCS Playoffs, Kassadin wasn't picked or banned a single time. When Worlds 2014 started in September, Kassadin had a 43% win rate in solo queue and only a 4% ban rate. He probably only had that ban rate because people were so used to banning him, they just kept doing it automatically. But Kassadin was picked at Worlds anyway. He appeared in 8 games, a low overall presence. There is a twist though. He was being played in multiple roles.
Zillion was already locked in there. We will be seeing Lucian full Zephyr and a
classic save.
Top lane.
They've done it before.
Save, yeah.
Classic save. It's something that they did a lot of over in Korea, and it's a pretty darn good answer to a split pusher because Kassadin can keep up with people until the rest of the team arrives to finish them off.
Kassadin would find a lot of success in top lane, being used as a counter pick and filling a specific role in the team. He found some success in mid lane too, but during the semifinals and grand finals, he was locked in by Looper in the top lane. He was even played in the final match of the entire tournament during Samsung White versus Royal Club.
We're actually going to see Kassadin locked in for the top lane for Looper.
Actually, Dandy just uses that as a front door to get in. There's the Ghost Blade. They hop in. Oh, the Ghost Blade into Shockwave, or rather Rengar jumping into the Shockwave out of invisibility, and that's going to be huge damage. This might even be enough for the next inhibitor. Kills coming in from Looper as he gets to the backside. As you said, chat, thriving in chaos. Looper doing just that. It's huge, and they may just try to win this one.
Samsung White, of course, won Worlds 2014. With Kassadin performing well at Worlds, and based on his history so far, you probably expect his ban rate to skyrocket. Well, that didn't happen. It would be months of Kassadin having basically no ban rate at all and a very poor win rate. September, October, November, and December. It was clear that Riot just didn't know what to do. Season 5 had even started and Kassadin was still seen as a dead champion. But toward the end of January and in early February, his ban rate was popping back up, despite his win rate being bad. And Kassadin finally showed up in the patch notes again. Patch 5.3. A nerf. Minus 10 damage on his Q.
What?
Based on his win rate, you're probably surprised to see this. See, Kassadin was still known as being very strong, and it's because he really was. The NA LCS, EU LCS, LPL Spring, and Champion Spring seasons had all started in January. Kassadin had appeared in 4 of 5 games on the first day of the NA LCS, and the same for the EU LCS. On the first day of LPL, he appeared in 7 of 8 games. At Champion Spring 2015, there was only one best of 3 played on the first day of the season. Kassadin appeared in all 3 games. Then he appeared in every game during the next best of 3, and also the next one. Kassadin was dominating competitive in every region simultaneously. Season 5 of the pro scene was starting with Kassadin having a minimum 80% presence from day 1.
And I do actually really like how bans are shaping up in the NALCS. Notice that with the exception of Rumble, all these bans are under 50%, meaning we're seeing a lot of variety in what is being removed, despite a very low number of games played overall. You'd expect to see outliers very frequently. I mean, okay, there's the Kassadin, right? There's ones you expect to see in most games here.
I previously mentioned that Kassadin was nerfed in February. The day before that nerf, he had a 47.5% win rate and a 37% ban rate. After the nerf, it didn't really change. His ban rate had actually gone up. The patch notes said that his near unparalleled mobility coupled with high damage and precise target selection historically made him one of League's most resilient champions. and that right now their best method of gating Kassadin, that is, trying to keep him from face rolling over the game, was by intentionally keeping his lane weak. This was in hopes of staving off what could feel like an inevitable rift walking nightmare. They also added that most fights felt like they were Kassadin's to lose, rather than something that could be outplayed. They also ended by saying that this would not be the nerf to fix those issues. I think it's also worth noting that one part of this was almost like a grim prediction of what was to come. Who'd have thought that an ultra-mobile assassin would have game health difficulties? Yeah, who would have thought? While the average player was struggling to survive on Kassadin in solo queue, it was known that if you simply scaled and made it to the late game, you would no doubt win the game. Many players didn't like that despite Kassadin's overall performance in solo queue being not great, he was still going to be nerfed. And nerfed again in the near future according to the patch notes.
Kassadin is still old Kassadin, still the most popular champion here in Europe.
With the nerf having no impact at all, and Kassadin still being the most popular champion in pro play, Riot felt like they had to act. 2 weeks later, a new patch would release, and this patch would be the final resting place for the old version of Kassadin. The nerf to Kassadin in this patch is likely one of the biggest nerfs in League's history. The two defining things mentioned at the beginning of the video were his silence, which was long since removed, and his ult. Specifically, the range of his ult, which was now being changed. Kassadin's ultimate, Rift Walk, from release until patch 5.4 had 700 range. It was being lowered to 450. His Rift Walk was now a Rift Hop, or a Rift Crawl. The patch note said, Kassadin is a champion whose fantasy and identity are both defined by a single ability, Rift Walk. While this does make him super effective as an assassin, it's tough to both respect what makes him unique while also respecting the need for opponents to fight back. With this change, we're still trying to preserve the dream of letting Kassadin keep his trademark mobility, but unless he finds a specific flank or angle, he also needs to pay respect to the enemy's tank line. For reference, Kassadin's new ult range was only 25, higher than Lucian's dash. The community was not happy with this change. It had been a long time since Kassadin was the 97% ban rate, over 50% win rate solo queue terror. Some players felt that Kassadin was getting Olafed. For those that weren't around back then, getting Olafed was a term that basically meant that the champion was intentionally gutted. Until Riot could figure out some way to try to make them balanced, or rework them, Riot would make a champion as unplayable as possible, keep them out of pro play, and to discourage people from picking them in solo queue. Olaf was a champion that was overpowered, busted even, but underperforming on average in solo queue. In pro play, he was dominating, and Riot had to nerf him. Sound familiar? Before Olaf, there was Evelynn, who was also nerfed into an unplayable state by Riot because they simply couldn't balance her old stealth and stun mechanics. I have an entire 40-minute video about Evelynn and her history if you're interested in hearing more about that. This video, though, is about Kassadin. In the patch 5.4 rundown video posted to the League of Legends YouTube channel, they talked about the Kassadin nerf a lot.
What is oppressive, rather?
I think you mentioned Kassadin.
Right, yeah, I heard his range got reduced slightly. So Kassadin, he has a problem with, that we see a lot, where he gets picked in competitive like every game or none, right? Yeah. He's got like something like a 90% pick ban this season. Last season he was picked banned every game by Red Side. Yeah. And the reason is because he tends to just not have ways to deal with him. He's a character who, he's strong because he doesn't have a ton of counterplay when he gets fed. I mean, what is the game plan against Kassadin, right? It's like, pick an AD laner, hope he doesn't go top, try to beat him out before 6 when he last hits under tower and then kills everyone. There's a play pattern problem there,
Don't be under him when he blinks on top of you.
So he kind of stamps out picks, unlike Sivir, right? He says, you can't play Lux, I'll just catch her and kill her, right? Yeah. That's kind of why we're doing a treatment with Kassadin, where we're like, well, we want to add ways to play against him, and that's the range change. Range tends to give a lot of telegraphing to opponents and room to play against, the ability to anticipate where he's going to attack you from. Right. He can't just blink on top of Malphite that ulted and like one-shot the backline anymore. Right. He has to have the repeated rift walk.
So what was the actual impact of this nerf? Well, the death of Kassadin. Shortly after the nerf, Kassadin fell down to under a 37% win rate, and his ban rate became non-existent. Some players were happy to see Kassadin finally buried. The champion had gone from being a once pick or ban champion who you would be guaranteed to almost never see on your team, to a champion that you would hope to never see locked in on your team. This nerfed version of Kassadin was only picked one time at the NA LCS Spring Playoffs. He was picked in 5 of 27 games at the EU playoffs, and wasn't banned a single time. At the LCK Spring Playoffs, he wasn't even picked once. Surprisingly, in the LPL, he was picked or banned in most games still, with a 63% presence for the playoffs. This is a testament to how incredibly strong Kassadin was. Even without the silence and an incredibly nerfed ult range, he was still being picked and actually finding some success. So just imagine how powerful he would be if he still had that silence at the same time. And then imagine how strong Kassadin must have been when he had a 97% ban rate while also having a 52% win rate, his silence, and his old ult range. After the ultimate nerf, Kassadin's win rate in solo queue stayed low for a very long time. The next 5 times Kassadin would appear in the patch notes would be to buff him, and he received 50 extra range on his ult, buffing the range to 500, which is still its range today. The rework of Kassadin when his silence was removed in March 2014 is seen as the start of the downfall of old Kassadin. The nerf to his ultimate, which was 11 months later, was the final blow. Kassadin, of course, still exists in the game today, and his moveset is pretty much the exact same as it was in 2015. Over time, and with many buffs, Kassadin's win rate would eventually even out. But the old version of Kassadin, the nightmare champion that dominated the game, was finally gone. My goal with this video was to tell the story of old Kassadin, which is easily the most requested topic by my viewers, and this is the end of that story. If you are one of those people who were lucky enough to get to play Kassadin at his peak, or unlucky enough to have to play against him, let me know down below. And I'm curious, what do you think about old Kassadin? Was he really League's most overpowered champion, especially considering how long it took for Riot to eventually balance him? Before finishing up, I want to take a moment to thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate all the support and feedback, and I'm really grateful I get to make content like this. Let me know your thoughts down below, and again, thank you for watching.
The balance of power must be preserved.